shows what we could see and touch, thrones and crowns in the strength of a man. And slowly our hearts were shaped by that choice, till injustice grew where trust had been. From king to king, the wound went deep, till the land itself could no longer stand. What began as a wish to be like the world ended with chains and a foreign land. You did not choose us to blend in or measure ourselves by the nation's gain. You chose us to carry your name alive, to show the world what it means to live by faith, to walk in justice, mercy, truth, to trust our King, though unseen, to be a kingdom under your rule, a people wholly set apart and free. We were called to be yours alone, set apart, known by your name, not like the nations, not like the world, but a people who walk in your ways.
From the far edge of the Northlands, God comes with lightning speed. As the Lord of many peoples, blind with pride and drunk with greed. Shields like shadows, spears like thunder, horses black against the dawn. All their banners set for plunder, all their hatred driving on. They say now we take the mountains, now we strip the peaceful land. Now we fall upon the people, gathered by a greater hand. Like a storm they roll in fury, drive the horde with frightful aim. But they do not know the Holy One, and they do not know His name. They come against the peaceful dwellings, against the land restored from war, against the fields, against the shepherds, brought back home forevermore. They thought the stillness meant no power, they thought the silence meant no king. They did not hear the wrath behind it, nor the storm their feet would bring. Then the jealousy of Yahweh kindled, and the mountains reeled in dread. Every creature felt the trembling, every tower bowed its head. Cliffs were torn and walls were broken, all the proud things of men fell low. For the God who planted Israel rose against the host below. I will make known my holy name in the midst of Israel. I will rise in fire and fury, and the nations all shall tell. There is none above the heavens, there is none of greater fame. I will defend my chosen people, I will sanctify my name. camp, hail and fire split the sky. Sulfur burned upon the riders, banners dropped into the flame. On the mountains of my people, judgment fell on those to blame. So the armies of the Northlands fell upon the heights they cursed, and the land they came to ravage, saw the hand of Yahweh striking first. Vows were shattered, pride was swallowed, all their boasting turned to smoke. Not by mortal strength were they broken, but by every word he spoke. Then the nations looked and trembled, then remnants Israel could see. He who gathered is their keeper, he who planted set them free, and his holy name was lifted in the sight of earth and sky. For the God of Israel still reigns with all power from on high. I will make known my holy name in the midst of Israel. I will rise in fire and fury, and the nations all shall tell. There is none above the heavens, there is none of greater fame. I will defend my chosen people, I will sanctify my name. I will sanctify my name. From the north they came with violence, on the hills their strength was slain. Yahweh rose in wrath and glory, now the nations know his name.
When the thunder has fallen silent, when the smoke has cleared away, still your glory fills the heavens, still your truth outshines the day. You are holy in your judgment, you are faithful, you are true. You defend the ones you gather, there is none like you. You are mighty in the mountains, you are mercy to the weak. You remember every promise, you are near to those who seek. You restore the lost and broken, you bring life where hope was through. You are shepherd, king and keeper, there is none like you. There is none like you, oh Yahweh, none above you, none beside. Holy, righteous, everlasting, Lord of power, Lord of light. Let the coastlands hear your voice. Let the kings of earth be humbled. Let the waiting hearts rejoice. From the valleys to the heavens, let your praise the whole earth move. Well known, our God forever. There is none like you.
When I can't speak, even youth may fall and fail, but your promise will prevail. You strengthen, you help, you stay. You never turn your face away. I will wait for Yahweh. I will rise again. You renew the weak. You strengthen the spent. I will mount up with wings like eagles. I will run and not be weary. I will walk and not faint, because you hold me, you uphold me. Not forgotten, not forsaken, chosen, held, awake and strengthened. I will wait for Yahweh, and I will rise.
Not like the nations, we were called to be yours alone, set apart, known by your name. Not like the nations, not like the world, but a people who walk in your ways. You brought us out by your mighty hand. You gave us your law, you gave us the land. You dwelt among us, you went before. Yet we asked to be something we were never meant for. We chose what we could see and touch, thrones and crowns and the strength of men. And slowly our hearts were shaped by that choice, till injustice grew where trust had been. From king to king, the wound went deep, till the land itself could no longer stand what began, and so wished to be like the world, and it would change. And a foreign land measure ourselves by the nation's gain. It shows us to carry our name and light, to show the world what it means to live by faith, to walk in justice, mercy, truth, to trust our King, though unseen, to be a kingdom under Lord, a people holy, set apart and We were called to be yours alone, set apart, known by your name. Not like the nations, not like the world, but a people who walk in your ways.
Well, this is our Bet Midrash, and we're looking at Deuteronomy chapter 4. This is a very exciting chapter, and I think you're going to find that it covers something that you don't hear a great deal about. You know, very often when people are listening to a teacher, a biblical teacher, or a sermon, they're looking for something that they want. But how often do people really think about what does God want? Joining me for tonight's Midrash is a good friend of mine, and this is Brother Fred McAdams. Welcome, Fred.
Hey, good evening, Eliyahu.
Fred and I go back quite a while, don't we, Fred?
Yes, we do.
And so I'm very excited to have you with us as we explore Deuteronomy chapter 4. So let's get right into that. We'll get into our first verse tonight. Would you read that first verse for us?
Sure will. Now, Israel, listen to the statutes and to the ordinances which I teach you, to do them that you may live, and go in and possess the land which Yahweh, the Elohim of your fathers, gives you.
Well, I think this is a great verse that starts this chapter and this teaching, and especially when we realize where Israel is right now. They're on the plains of Moab, on the east side of the Jordan. They're just about to cross over into the promised land to begin to take the promised land. And Moses is giving them this instruction, and really he's telling them these statutes and these ordinances and how important these are for them to live and to possess the land. Any thoughts about that?
Well, it's almost like it's a checklist for how you can be successful. Yeah, you're about to go into the land, but in order to stay there, it's going to require some obedience and some work. And so these instructions are getting laid out. This is kind of the most important thing. It's like leaving your gas card at home when you're going on a road trip. You know, you're not going to make it very far.
Yeah, that's a fact. The first thing I want to notice in this verse is that Moses is talking to Israel as a nation. I've noticed that a lot of times when we read in the Torah of Moses, we internalize it for us as individuals. And what you actually find in the Torah is that sometimes it's talking to the nation as a whole, and sometimes it's talking to individuals. Here, when Moses is saying, listen to the statutes and to the ordinances, this is talking to the nation. Statutes and ordinances have to do with the government of the nation of Israel. And this is why this is set out like this. You know, wouldn't just commandments cover everything if it was just to us personally? But statutes and ordinances, don't they even sound like the law, like legal things? Well, they are. Statutes and ordinances are for the purpose of the law. And what you have to realize about the Torah is that it is actually a complete system for the rulership of the nation. And this is the beauty of the Torah. It's for the rulership of the nation. And so while there are things that are directed directly to individuals, which of course we should adopt and do, there's other things we can't really do because we are not organized fully as a nation yet in the land. And that's what the statutes and ordinances are about. We have here some definitions about statutes. Strong's tells us that it means separation and coming together. Statutes are something that bring the nation together, a legal system that brings the nation together. And then ordinances are connected with that, having to do with precedents, ruling over cases, and so on. All of this is for the national government. And I think that's so important for us to realize as we move forward with what Moses is talking about here.
Well, it's a great distinction that you make there and very helpful to people that just kind of lump them all together. And certainly, commandments are something that maybe are a little bit more personal for us to do, whereas, statutes and ordinances are something that are more community binding, if you will, and certainly something that help us to interact with others as well.
The fact that we do not have a functioning Israel in the statutes and the ordinances of Yahweh is really why our world is so messed up. Because, like I mentioned, it's for a complete system that's made for the welfare of a nation. And it's the wisdom of Yahweh. I had some thoughts that I wrote down while I was putting this together. And I just want to repeat those. Being organized as a nation to function in the statutes and ordinances of the nation is a prerequisite for entering and possessing the land Yahweh gives us. See, as we look at the verse, we see that. It says, listen to the statutes and ordinances to do them, that you may live and go in and possess the land. So, possessing our land, which is our inheritance, is conditional on actually doing the statutes and ordinances of Yahweh as his nation. Goes on, it is self-evident, therefore, that the remnant nation must be gathered and functioning in the statutes and ordinances of the nation before Yahweh will bring the remnant nation back into the land. Do you see that principle in that verse?
I do. I don't mean to skip ahead, but looking at verse 2, it's so important. It's like he's giving you the recipe to make a dish. And, it's going to work out well as long as you follow what he's telling you to. But if you don't, and into verse 2 there, do you want me to go ahead and read that?
Sure, go ahead.
You shall not add to the word which I command you, neither shall you take away from it, that you may keep the commandments of Yahweh your Elohim, which I command you. It's such a natural temptation for us to just think, hey, I can do this way, or hey, there's this shortcut or this other way. And he's very, very much reminding us, don't do that. He knows our nature. He knows that could come up. So just a fabulous verse that follows up that first.
It really does. And of course, adding or taking away from his word negates its actual meaning and force. So that's such a big issue too. I was just noticing too here about this word commandment. And this is different, and we're going to see more about that as we go along from the statutes and ordinances. And it does have to do with individuals enjoining commandments upon individuals to give a charge. So when we read the commandments, it's Yahweh giving a charge, but it also means to set in order. And, this kind of looks to the whole nation in the sense that when we do the right thing, when we obey the commandments, it creates an order within the nation that is righteous and beautiful and people are happy, things work the way they should when we keep his commandments. It's not just that he's mean and wants us to do all these hard things. It's what makes our nation work well, what makes our lives good. So I just really appreciate that. Here's something else to look at where he says, you shall not add to the word which I command you, neither shall you take away from it. Do you think that's easy or hard to do? What do you think?
Oh, I think it's probably pretty darn easy to do. And we certainly know the Pharisees did all kinds of adding to the law with their oral tradition that I certainly did a lot of lessons on and hidden in plain sight. And it's done great harm to believers because so much of the New Testament is arguments against oral law. And they always just say the law in scriptures, without really discerning between them. So, unfortunately, people walk around today feeling empowered to ignore the very same things that are given to us for our success in the land as a nation. So it's like muddying the waters is what has been done by man, adding to, taking away. And now look at how many religions we have all claiming the same God.
Yeah, it's so true. It's so true. And you know what you're saying about the Pharisees and scribes and having their own law, their own religious law, that really is something that you find in the New Testament. And a lot of times when we read our New Testament as talking about the law, people think that's talking about the Torah and then think, well, that's done away with, or that's not a good thing. But actually, there was a competition, you might say, between the followers of Yeshua and the scribes and Pharisees and the people that supported them. And they were a cult. They were a cultic group, and they used violence and even murder, not only against Yeshua, but against his followers. So when it's talking in a negative way against the law, it's talking about these traditions of the elders of the nation, this cultic group. It's not commanding us not to keep Yahweh's commands, which makes no sense. Why would Yahweh give us commands and tell us in one place, these are good for us to live, and then we get to the New Testament and it's, well, forget all that. So I think that's a really good point that you make about that.
We shouldn't be too grumpy at the Pharisees and the scribes because our own religious leaders today teach their own traditions that if you're honest with, you have to strip a lot of what you've been taught because they're just the same as what the Pharisees and scribes were doing.
Absolutely right. And so this is what we're really trying to get at, is what the scriptures themselves actually say without adding anything to it or taking anything from it. And that's why we go verse by verse in our Midrash. Would you want to read verse 3 and 4 for us?
Absolutely. Your eyes have seen what Yahweh did because of Baal Peor. For all the men who followed Baal Peor, Yahweh, your Elohim, has destroyed them from among you. But you who were faithful to Yahweh, your Elohim, are all alive today.
This is in the book of Numbers, this whole incident about Baal Peor. So we're not going to go into this. We've already studied this. But essentially, this was where thousands of Israel's men were seduced into idolatry. And a terrible plague killed all of the guilty parties, but not the faithful people. And I think there's a lesson in that for us today. Here's verse 5. Behold, I've taught you statutes and ordinances, even as Yahweh my Elohim commanded me, that you should do so in the middle of the land where you go in to possess it. So as we look at this, we can see what I was pointing out earlier. The statutes and ordinances are for the nation in the land. But they were told to keep those statutes and ordinances already before they went into the land. So what this is suggesting to me is that the remnant nation needs to do the same thing. And this requires a huge change of thinking, because even though we're not in the land, we have to get to a place where we learn to think in terms of a nation, that we're citizens of a nation, even though we're not in the land yet. We need to do that so that we will be ready when we go into the land, which is why, again, that we're studying the Torah like this, because this is the constitution of the nation. So this is how it is with the statutes and ordinances, and this is why there are statutes and ordinances that we have come across and will continue to that actually cannot even be practiced anywhere but in the land, because they're for the land. They're for Yahweh's people in the land. And these are not done away with. They still need to be kept when we get into the land, because this is Yahweh's order for his people and for the land. There is a connection between his people and the land. And basically, when they keep the statutes and the ordinances, they can stay in the land, and when they don't, they can't. It's pretty simple. And this brings me to something else I wanted to share, and then I'd like to get your thoughts about this. In Malachi chapter 4, it's talking to the remnant of Israel. And as a matter of fact, chapter 3 and 4 develops this whole theme, but we don't have time to go into this fully. So if you want to know more about this, you can read those chapters. But when we get near the end of all of that, where it's talking about the remnant and what Yahweh would do to raise them up, in Malachi chapter 4, verse 5, now it's speaking to the last days remnant. Remember the Torah of Moses, my servant, which I commanded to him in Horeb for all Israel, even statutes and ordinances. Behold, I will send you Elijah the prophet before the great and terrible day of Yahweh comes. So this is definitely talking about the final day. And what is important here is for the remnant to remember the Torah of Moses. Now, this goes totally against a lot of Christian teaching, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I think, if you have a Christian background and you read this verse, it leaves you scratching your head. Why is it telling me that I need to remember the Torah, and then especially the statutes and the ordinances? And the reason is because the remnant are returning to the land to be his nation in the land, and they need to know the statutes and ordinances and the Torah in order for that to happen. And that's why it tells us that he's sending Elijah the prophet, because that's the job of Elijah the prophet, to facilitate that, to teach the people, to teach the remnant nation the importance of the Torah, even the statutes and ordinances, which often get overlooked, but are so important for the nation returning to the land. Any thoughts about that?
I love that you bring this verse up. It's one of the verses that, really led to my seeking out of instruction, because I'd grown up in the Christian tradition. I'd been told the law was done away with, and everything Moses said, it's for the Jews over there. And okay, that sounded simple enough, and forward I went. Well, until, you get to passages like this, that there is no gray area here. There's complicated scriptures that you really have to dig into. This one is not, nor is it in Revelation when it says the group Messiah is really looking for those that have the testimony of Yeshua and keep the commandments. And excuse me for paraphrasing that, but that was another great example of a place where I was studying Revelation, and I'm like, well, wait a second. This isn't what I was taught. And of course, when you go try to speak to, the religious leaders about this in the traditional church, there's a lot of head scratching.
Yes.
And so I think it's a fabulous verse. It's one I've pulled out many times. It's the very last book in most people's Old Testament, and some of the very last verses in the Old Testament. And it really shows us that, no, this is very important if we're going to go by the word of Yahweh.
Exactly. And I think the fact that it points us to the statutes and ordinances, it's telling us that his nation is being reconstituted. And I think that's such an exciting and important thing too. And we've got more of that here in this chapter. Moses himself is talking about this. So I think we'll move on. I think we'll let you read these verses, okay? This is 6 through 8.
Keep therefore and do them, for this is your wisdom and your understanding in the sight of the peoples, who shall hear all these statutes and say, surely this great nation is a wise and understanding people. For what great nation is there that has an Elohim so near to them as Yahweh our Elohim is whenever we call on him? What great nation is there that has statutes and ordinances so righteous as all this Torah which I set before you today?
This, I think, is so vitally important, which is why I've got so much yellow on there.
Mm-hmm.
This is telling us what Yahweh wants. This is why he called out Israel to be his people and constituted them as a nation, and of course gave them all of these statutes and ordinances that reflect his wisdom. Because what he wanted to have happen is he wanted his nation, he wanted there to be his one nation in the world that lived according to his righteousness, his judgments, his way of dealing with the world. And you know what's so great about the Torah, I feel, is the Torah does not ignore the fact that we're weak, human beings are weak. It does not ignore the fact that there are poor people in the world. It doesn't ignore the fact that we're sinners and we have to deal with things. All of these things are dealt with in the Torah to help us deal with all of that and still operate in the wisdom of Yahweh. And it's amazing when you start to see the Torah from the standpoint of this system of justice and righteousness that Yahweh has provided for a nation of people. You start to understand that this is how Yahweh wants to reveal himself in this world. That's why this is all happening. That's why at this point Israel's about to go in and take the land, go into the promised land, because this is what Yahweh wants from them. He wants them to be practicing his statutes and ordinances and his righteousness. And for the world to see that and say, yeah, I really want that. What an amazing God that would create a people like this. And then they will turn to Yahweh and worship him. That's what Yahweh wants. And that's why only a nation can do this. And I wonder what your opinion is. Do you think Israel did that?
Oh, certainly no. We kind of know that, but I think one of the things that I've heard people say is they want to know God better. I want to know Yahweh. I want to know all about Yeshua. Okay, well, I think if you really listen, he really opens up and tells you what is in his heart through these statutes and ordinances and how we're dictated to care for people and treat our neighbor and on and on and on. It's really showing you the heart of Yahweh all along the ways. And then we are called to really be a witness of this to those around us by demonstrating to the best of our ability, keeping these commands as unpopular as they are in our settings, Maybe it just leads someone to go, why are you doing that? And if they really think about it, they start to see the wisdom that's in them.
When you ask people, what does God want? The phrase that I see most often for that is, well, he wants you. And I think that's true. He wants people to be in right relationship with him through his son Yeshua. And no doubt that's true. But that stops short of all that he wants, because he's not just wanting to save you. He's wanting you to be saved for a reason. And the reason is to be part of his people that do this. That a people together that is manifesting the very nature and character of Yahweh in the world through how they relate to one another and the unity they have together and thinking like he thinks, doing what he does because they're his and they obey him and they obey his word. And, there were times in Israel, a few, where we see glimmers of this. This second generation of Israel did pretty well. David did very well, but he had to fight wars to get there. During Solomon's day, people traveled from all over the world because they had heard about the kingdom of Israel. and they wanted to see it for themselves. But that didn't last a long time. In the first century, it's kind of interesting because, of course, the followers of Yeshua did live according to these statutes and ordinances, but they weren't really in control of the land. So there was limits to that. But nevertheless, as we read in the book of Acts of how they functioned together, they very much were functioning according to the Torah. As a matter of fact, in Acts chapter 22, I think it is, James says this is kind of bragging about the believers there to Paul. And he says, there's thousands of them that are all zealous for the Torah. And I think a lot of Christians, with the outlook they have today, they'd be scratching their head when they read that. Why is that a good thing, that they're all zealous for the Torah? Well, it's because they really were the nation of Israel in the world. They really were. When you read the book of James, he's writing to the 12 tribes scattered about. See, they had this mindset of being his nation. And it wasn't until the 2nd century when the Gentiles didn't want anything to do with all of that and broke off from the original Yeshua followers that everything then started moving away from this whole concept we're talking about now. And really, has the Christian church ever manifested anything like this?
No.
Is it possible that it could?
Boy, that's an interesting question. It doesn't sound like it's something that they're going to do necessarily, as much as I think there's people that are going to break free of their chains.
Yes.
And despite their neck of the woods that they're currently in, are just going to live that different way and hopefully cause others to do the same.
I think what you're saying is exactly right. And, I don't mean in any way in talking about this history to be condemning of any Christians. I know there's a certain path people go through as they learn more truth. And there's lots of wonderful, righteous believers, wonderful Christian people. And I'll tell you what I think is going to happen is the remnant is going to do exactly what we're reading. And Yahweh is going to restore his nation. And he is going to even take us back to our land, and we're going to keep his statutes and ordinances. And he's going to bless us, and he's going to be with us. And that's when a lot of these other folks, Christians, and maybe some who aren't believers yet, are going to see that. And it's going to start setting things right so that we can come into this unity, even in the midst of this darkness of this world that we're experiencing. This is why he chose Israel, so that Israel could do this in the last days. That's what that's about. Well, let's move on. I guess I'll read this one. It says, only be careful and keep your soul diligently, lest you forget the things which your eyes saw, unless they depart from your heart all the days of your life. But make them known to your children and your children's children. The day that you stood before Yahweh your Elohim in Horeb, when Yahweh said to me, assemble the people to me, and I'll make them hear my words, that they may learn to fear me all the days that they live on the earth, and that they may teach their children. This is very interesting to me because there's a wisdom in this that is amazing. If you're an Israelite, what does that mean for you regarding the covenant?
Well, all cheating aside, I have a little footnote in my Bible here with the big words, I do, underlined, which is a foreign concept, to most New Testament, believers. But, this is one of those places where it was really spelled out, and I had certain cliff notes I wrote in with certain things, but that was the day, we said, yeah, we're going to do it. And that had an obligation tied with it.
Right.
Just like a regular marriage,
Exactly.
You have vows, and if you want your marriage to last a long time, well, you keep your vows.
It's interesting that with a nation is just a big family in the biblical idea of a nation, not necessarily in the modern definition, but in the biblical definition, a nation is a big family. And just as families pass down their inheritance from generation to generation, and our inheritance is the covenant. If you have that heritage, it's yours whether you know it or not. So it doesn't matter how long that has gone by. that is yours. That covenant is yours, and the obligations of the covenant are yours. So I think that's an important thing for us to understand. And the wisdom of Yahweh is in this in an amazing way, because by choosing to work with a nation, he's now working with people that will exist for the rest of human history. So even though individual people die, that entity of the nation continues on as people are born into that nation. So it allows him to do some amazing things. And we're going to look at what some of those things are because they're spoken about here in this chapter. Let's go to the next section. And this is 11 and 12. Maybe you could read that for us.
Sure. You came near and stood under the mountain. The mountain burned with fire to the heart of the sky, with darkness, cloud, and thick darkness. Yahweh spoke to you out of the middle of the fire. You heard the voice of words, but you saw no form. You only heard a voice.
Yahweh came down on the mountain in fire. How mind-blowing is that? And Yahweh spoke the 10 Commandments out to the people. And they chose to enter into that covenant. Completely amazing thing, a unique national experience that no other nation has ever entered into. Makes Israel completely unique in all the world. Amazing story. Let's go to the next part here. He declared to you his covenant, which he commanded you to perform, even the 10 Commandments. He wrote them on 2 stone tablets. Now, this is interesting about the 10 Commandments. And you know something I've noticed is that there's a lot of Christians who keep the 10 Commandments. Even though there's like this mixed message that you get in a lot of places about the law being done away with, you still have that sense that the 10 Commandments are right and ought to be kept. And I think that speaks well of those that keep his commandments. But you notice the 10 Commandments are his covenant. We tend to think the whole Torah is his covenant, but the truth is the 10 Commandments actually embody the truth of the whole Torah and kind of boil it down into 10 things that everybody can do. I think that's pretty amazing.
I think so too, and something that I really enjoyed learning firsthand was that really, if you look at all the various commandments, they usually can get whittled into these 10 and then down into 2.
Yes.
So it's just a great reminder to everyone out there, you know, if you're really diligently working on the 10 Commandments, chances are inadvertently you're really probably keeping a bunch of others.
Right. And of course, his spirit in our heart helps us to do that. So it's a wonderful thing for every believer. But what we notice about this covenant and the 10 Commandments, this is a personal thing. The commandments are personal. In other words, it's in the heart of each believer. But then it goes on here, it says, Yahweh commanded me at that time to teach you statutes and ordinances that you might do them in the land. So then again, you have this same dichotomy between the commandments, which we would do in any time and place, wherever we are, but then we have the statutes and ordinances that we should do so that we can do them in the land. Now, if we are the remnant of Israel and we expect to be returned to the land, why is this important about the statutes and ordinances?
Well, we're going to need to know them.
That's right.
You know, it's like packing our tool belt with the right tools.
Exactly.
We're going to want to understand those customs and how to act so it goes well for everyone. And, you know, if all goes well, we'll all be on the same page.
Exactly. That's what it's all for. That's what it's all for. So this is what we need to be doing. This is what we are doing right now, right? This is what we're doing tonight. It's what we've been doing as we've been going through the Midrash, is we're really understanding the mind of God for how he wants his nation to operate and reflect him. So I think this is pretty interesting. Now he says, be very careful, for you saw no kind of form on the day that Yahweh spoke to you in Horeb out of the middle of the fire, lest you corrupt yourselves and make yourself an engraved image in the form of any figure, the likeness of male or female, the likeness of any animal that is on the earth, the likeness of any winged bird that flies in the sky, the likeness of anything that creeps on the ground, the likeness of any fish that is in the water under the earth. No idols. No idols of any kind. I think this is interesting how he just enumerates all these different things because he knows how people look for loopholes, right? And it's kind of interesting. Like if you go into certain churches and they have these images of saints that some people pray to, and you say, well, how can you do this when the scriptures say not to make any images?
The first thing you see is a man hanging on a cross in a church.
Yeah.
Or I was watching something talking about the Vatican and where they have the statue of St. Peter and everyone coming by in long lines just to touch it and kiss it. And as you're reading those last couple verses, I'm just sitting here shaking my head. It's like we've done that tenfold over.
Yeah.
We've
been so lax. Believers over the centuries have been so lax regarding this. And Yahweh takes this very seriously, or it wouldn't be enumerated out like this. There's more. Lest you lift up your eyes to the sky, and when you see the sun and the moon and the stars, even all the army of the sky, you are drawn away and worship them and serve them, which Yahweh your Elohim has allotted to all the peoples under the whole sky. But Yahweh has taken you and brought you out of the iron furnace, out of Egypt, to be to him a people for his own inheritance, as it is today. Of course, in ancient times, people did worship the sun, moon, and stars, and all the witches would be out dancing in the woods and on and on. But this is not for Yahweh's people. Why is this not for Yahweh's people to do?
Well, he's giving us the proper forms of worship, and he doesn't want us worshiping the creation as much as he wants us to regard the creator. And it's interesting, all these things he pointed out are merely tools of his creation, and you're not supposed to worship some part of that. And, if someone thinks this is silly, well, in verse 19, our world is steeped in sun worship.
Yes.
A lot of Christianity is steeped in it. And I love pointing those kind of things out to people. And we're really kind of trapped in that 3rd century Roman world if you live in the Western world.
Right. Yeah, very much so. And then, of course, today there's this big resurgence of paganism. And so you've got all of that too. But there's one nation. See, this is what this is telling us again. Yahweh brought them out, this one nation, to be to him a people for his own inheritance. And I think this is an amazing phrase, a people for Yahweh's inheritance. It talks a lot in the scriptures about Israel's inheritance. But it's an amazing thought to think that his people are his inheritance. So I was interested in that. I wanted to look more into that. There's some verses that we will get to later in Deuteronomy 32, but just showing the consistency of this through the whole book of Deuteronomy. I thought I would just look at these verses. It says, when the Most High gave to the nations their inheritance, when he separated the children of men, he set the bounds of the peoples according to the number of the children of Israel. For Yahweh's portion is his people. Jacob is the lot of his inheritance. He met him in a desert land, in the waste, howling wilderness. He surrounded him. He cared for him. He kept him as the apple of his eye. Now here it's telling us that our patriarch father, Jacob, is the lot of his inheritance. And so this is telling us how Jacob is his inheritance. It means this refers to the covenant that Yahweh made with Abraham. We think of that covenant as providing an inheritance for Abraham, and indeed it does, but it also provides an inheritance for Yahweh, because in this covenant that Abraham agreed to, Abraham's seed, his nation, now becomes Yahweh's nation. And so this is an amazing relationship that Yahweh had with our patriarch fathers. And this is the reason why this one nation that springs from Abraham and Jacob is his special nation in the world. And do you think something like that could ever change? I mean, if the nation of Israel is Yahweh's inheritance, is he ever going to throw away his inheritance?
Absolutely not. Yeah, no, absolutely not. And what's even better is with the consistency of his message is that we have an invitation to join in
Yes.
and be part of his inheritance.
Yes, that's right. And for those who haven't been with us through the whole Midrash, through all of the Torah, we've gone through statutes and ordinances that tell us how people who are foreigners can join Israel and be just as much a part of Israel as natural-born Israel. And I think there's a lot of folks who don't know that, who think that somehow, that only happened later because Yeshua came. And yeah, Yeshua came and he does open the doors for all people. But we find this right in the Torah. This is just carrying on the wisdom and the righteousness of God to allow anyone that wants to be a worshiper of the true God to be part of his nation. And this can still happen now. And I think that's awesome. Here's more about the inheritance that I thought was interesting that I'd like to share. This is from Isaiah 63. This is about the remnant of Israel after they have been scattered throughout the world. Ibn Ezra, who is a rabbi, calls this the prayer of the wise in captivity. And the BBC commentary calls it the prayer of the remnant. As a matter of fact, in that particular commentary, it has that as a big, bold heading over this section of Scripture, which I think is pretty interesting. The prayer of the remnant. And it says this, "Look down from heaven and see from the habitation of your holiness and of your glory, where are your zeal and your mighty acts? The yearning of your heart and your compassion is restrained toward me." And that me is personifying the remnant people, the scattered remnant people. "For you are our father, though Abraham doesn't know us and Israel does not acknowledge us. You, Yahweh, are our father, our redeemer, from everlasting is your name." See, this is true. We don't look like Israelites, scattered Israel, because generations past have been assimilated into the nation, whatever nation we happen to be in. So, we don't look like Israel, and we don't keep a lot of Jewish customs and stuff, so we don't really look like them. And Abraham, he wouldn't know us because we're so different, really, from the rest of Israel. But Yahweh knows us. That's what it is saying here. You, Yahweh, are our Father, our Redeemer, from everlasting is your name. O Yahweh, why do you make us to err from your ways and harden our heart from your fear? Return for your servant's sake the tribes of your inheritance. A lot of times people think, well, the Jews are Israel. No, the Jews are a tribe of Israel. What about the rest of the tribes? Aren't they his inheritance too?
Absolutely.
You think he'll just forget them?
Oh, no.
Of course he won't. And I know you know that.
The way I've always put that to people is when, you're reading about Moses in the wilderness, at what point did he say, hey, Judah, come over here, and, oh, no, not you, just
Yeah.
Judah. And, of course, people, well, that's silly. It's like, well, yeah, but that's how we refer to it today.
Right, exactly. But the scripture's clear. The book of Isaiah is clear. It's the tribes of his inheritance. Your holy people possessed it but a little while. Our adversaries have trodden down your sanctuary. We have become as they over whom you never ruled, as those who were not called by your name. So this is the plight of the remnant in captivity in the nations of the world, and really yearning for that relationship that we once had in the land, looking to see Yahweh act to return us. And there's more about that as we move on. Maybe you'd like to read these for us, Fred.
Furthermore, Yahweh was angry with me for your sakes and swore that I should not go over the Jordan and that I should not go in to that good land which Yahweh your Elohim gives you for an inheritance. But I must die in this land. I must not go over the Jordan, but you shall go over and possess that good land.
The nation and the land go together. And that was true then. This is true of the remnant in these last days. We're going to see more about that as we go on here. But Moses didn't go into the land. Yahweh forbid him to go into the land. This is because of a transgression of Moses, and Yahweh didn't allow that to happen. So Moses keeps mentioning this through the book of Deuteronomy, so I think he's really feeling this.
Mm-hmm.
You know, actions have consequences, right? Even for really good people. So it's a good thing to remember. He says, be careful lest you forget the covenant of Yahweh your Elohim, which he made with you, and make yourselves an engraved image in the form of anything which Yahweh your Elohim has forbidden you. For Yahweh your Elohim is a devouring fire, a jealous Elohim. Thoughts?
He wants us to have one thing in our heart, not 2 and 3 and 4 others. And he wants to know we're 100% all in for Yahweh and no other gods and no one else's ways.
Yes. You know, this word jealous has a meaning of great passion. And a lot of times we don't think of God that way. In fact, a lot of people sort of thinking of him as like the cream puff in the sky or something that just always loves everybody. Kind of like your grandfather that bounces you on their knee. And he's loving. He certainly is loving, but he's a devouring fire. He's passionate. He's very passionate about what is right and wrong. And he can tell when we're trying to scam him. And I see a lot of people do that with him because they have the wrong thinking about him. And that never ends well because this is how he is. He's just very, very passionate. When you shall father children and children's children, and you shall have been long in the land, and shall corrupt yourselves, and make an engraved image in the form of anything, and shall do that which is evil in the sight of Yahweh your Elohim, to provoke him to anger, I call heaven and earth to witness against you today, that you will soon utterly perish from off the land which you go over the Jordan to possess it. You will not prolong your days on it, but will utterly be destroyed. That's amazing. They hadn't even gone into the land yet, and what is Moses telling them will happen?
Oh, he's giving them one of the many ways they can get booted right off of this land.
Yeah, and you really can see it. You will not prolong your days on it, but will utterly be destroyed. And they were utterly destroyed from the land. But it goes on here, and it says, Yahweh will scatter you among the peoples, and you will be left few in number among the nations, where Yahweh will lead you away. There you shall serve gods, the work of men's hands, wood and stone, which neither see nor hear nor eat nor smell. So they hadn't even taken the land yet, and he's telling them that they will be scattered among the peoples, among the nations of the world. Has that happened?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, as much as it's laid out as something that would happen, it really is a prophetic passage.
Yes.
As are the ones after it, that we can look back at this and realize that this supposed, passage of scripture that wasn't for us is actually discussing our condition quite exactly.
Quite exactly. You know, I think this is interesting too, because when we actually think about this was a long time ago that this happened, thousands of years ago now, that the tribes of Israel were scattered among all of the nations and assimilated into those nations. And they had wives, they had children. So where are the descendants of all these people now?
Everywhere. I mean, in every corner of the globe. And I think we've seen, certainly in the last, 10 years plus now with Zion, we've seen a lot of those people that have popped up, and they're
Yes,
all
yes,
over the place. And
yes.
some of them are alone. Some of them have a small group of people. Others, can join in here, but they're slowly, coming up. And I think that's going to rapidly increase
Yes.
as the condition of our world and the hearts of men change. We're going to start to see those two groups of people really set apart a little bit more, stand apart.
Dawn and I were talking the other day about this issue of identity, and people identify a lot with the country they're born in.
Hmm.
And so if you say to them, well, you could be a descendant of the nation of Israel, and therefore that would mean that you have a certain standing having to do with the covenant. You have certain responsibilities to your nation. You have certain responsibilities even towards the land, towards Yahweh in certain ways. That sounds outrageous because they think, well, I'm an American. I'm not an Israelite. Or, I'm a Frenchman. I go back generations here in France. I'm not an Israelite. But we're talking about thousands of years now. The whole world could be peppered with these people, couldn't it?
Absolutely. And
Yeah,
the life is in the blood, and the blood has been scattered and transported all over this world. And let's not forget the wild olive branch that can also graft you in and make you part of this nation.
that's right.
So I don't rush out to do genealogy studies to figure out which tribe I'm from. I
Right.
just want to be part of the nation and the body of Israel.
Amen. Amen. Well, there's more here, as you mentioned. Let's look at that. You might want to read these verses.
Starting at verse 29, but from there you shall seek Yahweh your Elohim, and you shall find him when you search after him with all your heart and with all your soul. When you are in oppression and all these things have come on you in the latter days, you shall return to Yahweh your Elohim and listen to his voice. For Yahweh your Elohim is a merciful Elohim. He will not fail you, neither destroy you, nor forget the covenant of your fathers, which he swore to them.
Who
I
is,
love these passages.
it's amazing. Who is
I,
Moses speaking to here?
us.
Us.
I mean, absolutely us, not the children in that he's physically speaking with, because it actually says in the latter days.
Right.
There's a couple of things that really jump out to me, but it's right there in the beginning. But from there you shall seek Yahweh your Elohim, and you shall find him.
Yes.
I mean, that's a beautiful thing. It all comes down to the heart. The heart is the big one that we're really, especially in our country now, it's really a struggle. And really, Satan is just trying to get hatred in your heart.
Yes.
He wants you to hate politicians. He wants you to hate people for one reason or another. And yet Yeshua always said, love your enemy. So who's really pulling the strings in this world right now?
Right.
And if we can really remember that heart condition, I love that this is tied to that. Yeah, if it's with all your heart, you'll find him.
That's right. And, this is why this is happening. This is why the remnant of Israel is surfacing now, because these are the latter days. And this is going to happen a lot more. And what you were saying about it happening much more, it says, when you are in oppression, in the latter days you shall return to Yahweh. There is a growing oppression in the world, and anybody that can't see it is blind.
Mm-hmm.
And it's moving really quickly. The freedoms of people that they took for granted in the past are very, very quickly being eroded and taken away. It is going to cause more and more of the remnant to seek him with all their heart, because there's no place to go. They feel trapped. Many of them feel trapped. And here in the United States, it's no exception. We see things going on here in such a way, things don't look good for this country as to where things are headed. And when people are in trouble, many times this is when they seek Yahweh with all their heart. And so this is underway. These are the latter days. There is this growing oppression. We know people are seeking Yahweh, and they are learning their true identity. They're being drawn to this. Why would anybody be interested to be here at the Midrash tonight listening to these things? It's because they're drawn to it. the more they look into it, the more they'll feel it, the more they'll sense in their heart, this is me. I'm one of these people. Moses is talking to me.
Hmm. No, and I've got some interesting notations and just things I wrote in this passage in my study Bible. But years ago, boy, this really called out to me on a couple of things. It was one of those places where, and you've covered this in other teaching, the idea of the memra, or his voice, the word. Okay, like we read in John, and everyone's like, why is he talking about the word? And the word was with God and was God, and nothing was made without. Okay, this is one of those places where, yeah, we're going to not only return to Yahweh, but we're going to listen to his voice.
Yes.
And I think that's fascinating. Also, here it mentions that he will not fail you, neither destroy you, nor forget the covenant of your fathers, which he swore to them. We are constantly let down by men, whether it's our own constitution being cheated or not followed, or laws not working out equally. I mean, there's all kinds of covenants that just blow up in your face all around you. And here's a wonderful reassurance that, again, if you're seeking after him, he's not going to forget that covenant.
That's right.
And if it's truly in your heart, then he's going to keep it.
This just brings back to my mind the verse we looked at earlier in Malachi chapter 4 that's also talking to the remnant in the last days. And it says, remember the Torah and the statutes and the ordinances. This may very well have been what may have been in the prophet's mind at the time that he spoke that prophecy. Because what we're reading right now, it's really telling us that same thing, right? Don't forget the covenant of your fathers. And the reassurance here that Yahweh is merciful and he's not going to fail us. So, some people scoff at us because this all sounds so incredible that we could be descendants of the tribes of Israel and that we believe with all our heart that we are, and that Yahweh even now is preparing us to be his nation, and that he is going to take us and bring us back to the land. And we believe it because Yahweh is merciful and because these words are the truth. And he has not forgotten the covenant. And that's something solid we can hang on to. He's not forgot it. We shouldn't forget it either, because that's our link to our nation. So this is about our national salvation. You can have your personal salvation all taken care of through Yeshua. This is about something else. This is about our national salvation, and this is the way that we are going to give to Yahweh what he wants. His inheritance, his nation, that he can have a nation in this world in the midst of this darkness that the righteous can run into, where there can be an alternative to this one world government that is so quickly taking over the earth. It's just such an amazing thing. Well, this goes on, and it says, for ask now of the days that are past, which were before you, since the day that Elohim created man on the earth, and from the one end of the sky to the other, whether there has been anything as this great thing is, or has been heard like it. Has there ever been anything like the remnant exodus from all the nations of the world?
No. And I mean, maybe a close second was people leaving all kinds of oppression and coming and starting a new nation in America. That might have been something that maybe moved the needle on registering like the Exodus, but no.
And especially when you just realize this is out of all the nations of the world, not just one nation. It really is an amazing miracle. And I think this is why people don't believe us, because it seems like such an amazing thing that this whole nation could pop seemingly out of nowhere, right? And be really a force at work in the world. And it could happen so quickly, and it's really hard for us to imagine. But this is, in fact, something only Yahweh can do, and he is in the course of doing it right now. He goes on, did a people ever hear the voice of Elohim speaking out of the middle of the fire, as you've heard, and live? Or has Elohim tried to go and take a nation for himself from among another nation by trials, by signs, by wonders, by war, by a mighty hand, by an outstretched arm, and by great terrors, according to all that Yahweh your Elohim did for you in Egypt before your eyes. You know, that's pretty amazing. Very amazing. I think parting the Red Sea is not nothing, is it?
No.
Pretty big thing. The prophets tell us that what Yahweh did for Israel in the Exodus was great, but the remnant Exodus will be even greater. We're right on the verge of this happening. And this is going to be a jaw dropper. Like the whole world is going to watch this, and they won't believe their eyes what they're seeing. We have some verses from Jeremiah here. Maybe you'd like to read those, Fred.
Sure. Therefore, behold, the days come, says Yahweh, that it shall no more be said, as Yahweh lives, who brought up the children of Israel out of the land of Egypt, but as Yahweh lives, who brought up the children of Israel from the land of the north and from all the countries where he had driven them. I will bring them again into their land that I gave to their fathers.
Now, what is that we don't understand?
Well, it's certainly hard to square up with the religious leaders teaching nowadays that you don't need the first half of your Bible, now doesn't it?
Well, is it not a prophecy that has not yet been fulfilled?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And it leaves little doubt. It's not an obscure verse that someone could say, well, they're talking about when they came out of Egypt. No, it very clearly states that, no, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about something that hasn't happened yet.
Right.
And there's other verses like this in Jeremiah that are real hard to square if you're not studying and learning from the commandments and the statutes and ordinances.
Exactly. Yahweh is not done with his nation. It's the one nation in the whole world that has this covenant, that is, in fact, his inheritance. And the great thing about all of this is this nation that he is raising up is being raised up for the purpose of giving Yahweh what he wants for a change. A nation to actually represent him in a real way in the world, where people can actually see what justice and righteousness and the statutes and the ordinance of Yahweh are in a people. Actually see that at work in a people at the same time that the world is practicing all its debauchery, and there's all these bribes being taken, all of this corruption in all the nations of the world. I don't care what one you want to pick. I think by now, if any of us have watched the news, we understand that this is the world we're living in today. And what a contrast this is going to be. It's just an amazing thing to think about what Yahweh is doing. And really, of all the things that you could be part of in the world, why wouldn't this be the one you'd want to be part of?
I couldn't think of a reason.
Me neither. Me neither. I mean, some people might think, wow, if I could have been there to watch him part the Red Sea. And this book in Jeremiah says basically, well, when he does this thing, the stuff he did bring his people out of Egypt is old news. This is going to be big. So he's going to do it. He's going to do it.
It's the problem with people spiritualizing the Bible and spiritualizing a lot of what they have read. You know, when this comes to pass before their eyes, you know, if they can recognize it, it's really going to trip them up a little bit.
Yeah.
You know, whereas some of us are anticipating these things happening. We know our Messiah said, when you see these things come on the earth, don't put your head down, you know, lift your head up. Your redemption's near.
Amen.
So, you know, the more goofed up and messed up things get, the more you kind of feel right about studying these things all these years. Not right, but you feel vindicated.
Yes.
It's like, no, absolutely, because we really can't be shocked about these things.
Right.
And as I tell people, you know, I'm expecting an out of control freight train to come rolling down that track.
Yeah, right.
And trust me, when I see the out of control freight train, I'm not going to try to stop it. I'm going to get out of the tracks and let it go its course.
Amen.
So,
amen. You know, Revelation 7 comes to mind. The first part of Revelation chapter 7 You have the 144,000 out of all of the tribes of Israel, and it even names the tribes. And it's interesting when you read some of the commentary, they try to spiritualize that. But how do you spiritualize that as something else when it actually names all the tribes? That's a prophecy of the same thing. That's a prophecy of the remnant being returned to the land. That's what that's about, because they have a very big role to play. But then the next thing you have in Revelation 7 is a great crowd out of every nation standing before the Lamb. And see, what this is telling us is that what is going to bring about this great harvest that the book of Revelation talks about is when Yahweh does this great thing with his people and restores his nation. It's going to make the path for the rest of the righteous people in the world to turn to Messiah. And, of course, they can then be a part of his nation, right? And so finally, everything that he had planned on doing, where his nation could be this showpiece in the world of his wisdom, this place where he dwells in his people Israel, when the believers, who, I don't care what you've been, a Catholic, a Baptist, whatever, if you really are a believer and you know him, when you see him doing mighty deeds in the midst of his nation, you're going to know that's where he is, aren't you?
Oh, yeah.
So, this is just an amazing thing that he has saved for the last days in order to perform and wrap up this final harvest, even while all this other crazy stuff is happening with the Antichrist and the Great Tribulation, all of that. We're like right on the door of all of this happening.
I said earlier how studying his commandments and statutes and ordinances help you to understand the heart of Yahweh.
Yes.
Well, when we see the anti-Messiah come forward, he's not going to check those same boxes now, is he?
Right.
He might be saying the right things that kind of works for some people, but if you've really already been taught by Yahweh what it truly is in his heart, his goals and anti-Messiah's goals are going to be completely different.
Exactly. Yeah, we'll know. We will know. Let's move on. You might want to read this for us, Fred.
It was shown to you so that you might know that Yahweh is Elohim. There is no one else beside him. Out of heaven he made you to hear his voice, that he might instruct you. On earth he made you to see his great fire, and you heard his words out of the middle of the fire. Because he loved your fathers, therefore he chose their seed after them and brought you out with his presence, with his great power out of Egypt, to drive out nations from before you, greater and mightier than you, to bring you in, to give you their land for an inheritance as it is today.
Amen. Any comments?
Well, I guess we're going to kind of see this happen again now, aren't we?
We are indeed.
And as much as he's saying here that, hey, yeah, this is about to happen to you, speaking to those in the wilderness, this is again something we're reassured, just like you just read in Jeremiah, that we're going to see happen again, which really should give us all another reason to study the Exodus journey all the much more. I mean, patterns.
Exactly.
We're going to see patterns that repeat.
I love the fact that when you read these things with understanding, it starts coming together for you what's really happening. For instance, here in verse 37, Moses is telling them why Yahweh does this with Israel, with his nation. It's because he loved your fathers. Therefore, he chose their seed after them. Is there anything about that that has changed?
No, and it's certainly nothing that these people hearing this did. It was something that the fathers did that Yahweh's keeping his word to.
Exactly. I mean, they were his friends, and he loved them, obviously, and he still loves them. Yeshua, talking about the patriarchs, said, they're always alive to him. And so this doesn't just depend upon us. Some of us might think, well, I couldn't be one of them because, I'm not a great person, or I'm not some special Bible scholar, or whatever they think in their head you have to be one of his people of his nation. None of that matters, because he's not doing it because of you.
Right.
Right?
Right.
He's given
that's
you
what it's saying right here. It's not because of you.
Right.
And that's the same thing true today.
Right.
So that message that the world tries to tell you, that you have to be a good person to be saved, to be, part of Israel and this, that, and the other, that's just a lie.
It really is. I mean, this is something you can choose. It's because of our forefathers that he wants to do this with the seed of Abraham. And if you're that seed, then, you've got that chance. Why not take it? Why not step forward and take it? Because it belongs to you. And it mentions here an inheritance in the land. Yes, even so late as this, in the last days, Israel has an inheritance in the land. And when I say Israel, I'm not talking about the state of Israel. I'm also not slandering the state of Israel. But I'm talking about Israel in its original sense as the nation that descends from the forefathers, their seed after them. That's the nation I'm talking about. That's the nation that stood on the border of the promised land when Moses was talking to them, and their seed after them still alive today. It's his people, Israel. Know therefore today, and take it to heart, that Yahweh himself is Elohim in heaven above, on the earth beneath. There is no one else. You shall keep his statutes and his commandments, which I command you today, that it may go well with you and with your children after you, and that you may prolong your days in the land which Yahweh your Elohim gives you forever. So if we are the descendants of Israel, does this mean we have an inheritance in the land?
At some point, yes, it does.
It does.
Not right now.
No. But forever is a long time. So I just see that as him keeping it for us. That he's keeping it for us. And at the time that we're ready in the remnant Exodus, we will receive our inheritance in the land. We'll be returned to the land. And as you know, there's so many other prophecies telling us that. Then Moses set apart 3 cities beyond the Jordan toward the sunrise, that the manslayer might flee there who kills his neighbor unawares, and didn't hate him in time past, and that fleeing to one of these cities he might live. Well, we're not going to explain all that right now, but these are the cities of refuge as they were in the land, and these 3 that are east of the Jordan River were established first, before they even crossed the Jordan. This is according to the statutes of Yahweh that were already set up, that we've read about in the book of Numbers, and Moses is getting this done while he's still there. That's that part. Would you read these verses for us, Fred?
Yes. This is the Torah which Moses set before the children of Israel. These are the testimonies and the statutes and the ordinances which Moses spoke to the children of Israel when they came out of Egypt, beyond the Jordan in the valley over against Beth Peor in the land of Sihon, king of the Amorites, who lived at Heshbon, who Moses and the children of Israel struck when they came out of Egypt.
So all of these details are just to tell us what is going on, which we've already gone over. They took his land in possession, and the land of Og, king of Bashan, the 2 kings of the Amorites who were beyond the Jordan toward the sunrise, from Aror, which is on the edge of the valley of the Arnon, even to Mount Sion, also called Hermon, and all the Arabah beyond the Jordan eastward, even to the sea of the Arabah under the slopes of Pisgah. Now, these last things we've been reading, much of this concerns the military campaign against these kings, Sihon and Og, and we went over that in our last Midrash. And if you're interested in slaying giants, you might want to find this in our archive and look at this. It's pretty amazing stuff, all about the giants that they drove out of the land. Yes, it's all real. It's all real. So that's the conclusion of our verses. Here are some of the highlights we thought we'd talk about. Any of these things you'd like to talk about, or anything else, Fred?
I just want to let people know, if you just read chapter 4 and then you compare it to the message that the world tries to give you, is there any mystery why organized religion and the world systems of the world are so against the commandments and the statutes and the ordinances. It should be no mystery to you at all. If this is true and this is the promise that Yahweh gave us, then it should be our delight to stumble through these, be willing to leave some baggage at the door, and it doesn't all have to be dropped off at once. I've seen families make that mistake, but there's things that we need to be honest about with ourselves and customs. Are we following just as many bad traditions as the Pharisees and the scribes were dealing out?
Really?
You know, if we are, then quit being mad at Pharisees. You're the modern day Pharisee. So, and Yahweh's so much more simple. He lays his ways out. He doesn't change his mind.
Right, he sure doesn't. And everything is so practical. This is one of the things that you learn. A lot of times we think that spiritual means kind of ethereal and out there. But when we really get in touch with the wisdom of Yahweh that is in his Torah, we find that he really deals with the practical issues of life in such an amazing way. All of his judgments are so perfect. It's the way to live. It's the way to live. And I like in Jeremiah where it talks about the new covenant.
Yes.
A lot of people say, well, you see, there's a new covenant now. That means the old one is gone. Well, no, it doesn't mean the old one is gone. What we read in Jeremiah is that now the Torah is written in your heart. That's the difference. The Torah is still the wisdom of God. It's still the righteousness of God. But it's written in your heart instead of just being written out in words that you can easily ignore. When it's in your heart, it means you understand it. It means that you have taken in the heart of God into your heart, and you can just walk it out naturally and not have it be a burden in your life. And so these covenants, none of these covenants are done away with. This is what I found. All of the covenants are still in full effect. From the covenant with Noah, still in effect. The covenant with Abraham, still in effect. These are like layered on top of each other. The covenant with David, still totally in effect. And, of course, the new covenant. And these all complement each other. As each new covenant is brought in, they all complement one another and fit together perfectly. And why wouldn't they? They're all from the mind of God. There's just one God. He's not going to think of one thing at one time and then totally come up with something different. But it's just more truth that is built with each new covenant that he has brought forward. And of course, the greatest covenant is the new covenant, because it brings us into this place now where the Spirit of God actually lives in our hearts and opens up all of this to us. It's truly something amazing.
Well, just like the verses you pointed out in Malachi, the verses you just referenced in Jeremiah 31:31, leave your traditional Christian scratching his head. I mean, how can the Torah be in my heart? I keep being told the law is done away with, and just like the verses in Malachi, those are verses I flip to quite frequently when I'm debating people as to the validity of what we do with the teachings of Moses. And, it's just wonderful because there's so many of those that are like forever.
Yes,
like
really.
the biblical Sabbaths, they're forever. And they're not just for Judah.
Right.
He didn't usher the other 11 tribes away when he dealt those out that day. So we really need to look at that, for as silly as it sounds.
Exactly right.
And I like to reduce that to the ridiculousness,
I'll tell you, Brother Fred, I would like to just keep going with you on this because we just love to talk about this so much. But I think we need to bring our meeting to a close here pretty soon. So I need to say goodbye for tonight.
Yep, thank you for having me.
And Brother Fred, we love you, and we thank you so much for all the good things you do, all the things you shared with us with your radio program, and we just look forward to so much more from you. So be
I'm
blessed.
anticipating hopefully getting some new content when I take my sabbatical coming up and have several weeks away from my world. So we'll see what happens there.
That sounds awesome. Best wishes to your family too, brother.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom. So what does God want? God wants a nation. He wants a nation that walks in his ways, a nation to display his wisdom in the midst of a crazy world that has moved so far away from the wisdom of God that it's like they're in a whole other planet. The righteous of this world need to see that here in these last days. They need to see the living God of the Bible actually at work in his nation. And this is coming. This is coming very soon, and that's why we're doing this Midrash with you. So we just invite you to come back for each and every one of these as we go through the book of Deuteronomy.
What is Messiah's parable of the new wine and the new wineskin about?
Religionists don't want this kind of thing that Messiah was doing, that is free and open and real, that requires a real relationship with Yeshua and with the Father in order to operate. They can't handle that. So that's what Messiah was talking about when he talked about the new wine and new wineskins.
Listen to our podcast, Hebraic Insights in the Gospels, on all your favorite podcast directories. For more information about Zion Road Radio, visit our website at zion.org. That's TSIYON.org. Join us for more Hebraic Insights in the Gospels.
Friends, let's have a word of prayer. Our Father Yahweh, we come to you after considering these amazing words from the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 4. And we come away from this, Father, realizing your great wisdom, how you know the end from the beginning, how you knew that we as your people would fail you and we would be scattered throughout the earth. And yet, Father, you had made a covenant with us, and you have stayed true to your covenant, and you have a plan for these final days to bring back what was scattered and to consolidate us again as your nation under your covenant and under your Messiah, Yeshua. Father, help us to open our eyes and truly see with our spiritual eyes where we are right now in the stream of time. And help us, Father, not to just be seeing the things that we want, but, Father, to be concerned with the things that you want from us, your people, here in these final days. We do have needs, Father, and I know you're very aware of them. I want to lift up our remnant brothers and sisters tonight who need your touch in so many different areas of life. Father, I pray for those who are alone. I pray for those who need sustenance, Father. I pray for those who are having relationship issues that are very critical to their lives. I pray for those, Father, who are ill and have various illnesses. And I thank you, Father, that when we pray, you hear our prayers. And we've seen people often healed, even as recently as this week. This has been happening. We thank you, Father, that you care for us, that you care for your people here in these final days. We want to give you glory tonight for who you are, and we pray that you'll just help us to be steadfast in continually listening to you and looking after what you want from us. And Father, we pray tonight in the name of Yeshua, our Messiah. Amen. We thank you for being with us tonight, and now we have some music for you.
walk through a valley, silent and white. Bones in the dust on every side, very dry beneath the sun. Scattered remains of fallen ones. No songs lit, no banner flew, no trumpet sound, no life broke through. Then Yahweh spoke in the heat and flame. Son of man, can these bones live again? These bones shall live. These bones shall rise. By the breath of Yahweh, by the Lord of life. What was scattered he will restore. What was broken broke no more. From the grave to the promised land, he will raise them by his hand. These bones shall live, these bones shall rise. By his great name they shall be alive. I said, oh Lord, Yahweh, only you know. Then it says, speak and let my word flow. Tell these bones they will hear my word. Though no living voice they've seen nor heard. I will bind them with flesh and skin. I will breathe my spirit deep within. Then they shall know from first to last, I am Yahweh, by my word I can. So I spoke to the bones in the silent field, to the shattered house that would not yield. Then a rattling roar through the valley floor, bone to bone as they rose once more. Sinew and flesh came over the frame. Sin covered all that the dust had claimed. But still they stood with no breath inside. Still I'm waiting, hollow eyed. These bones shall live. These bones shall rise. By the breath of Yahweh, by the Lord of life. What was scattered he will restore. What was broken broke no more. From the grave to the promised land, he will raise them by his hand. These bones shall live, these bones shall rise. By his great name they shall be alive. Then he said, call to winds, now call. Speak to the breath of one and all. From north and south, from west and east, come fill the slain, both great and least. So I cried to the winds of heaven above, come by the word of the God of love. Then breath came in, and the dead stood strong, a mighty army to sing their song. Then he said, these bones are Israel's cry. Our hope is lost, and our dreams have died. So tell my people, I will restore. I will open up every grave and door. I will bring them home to their ancient land. I will plant them there by my own hand. And when they live where their fathers trod, they shall know that I am Yah their God. These bones shall live. These bones shall rise. By the breath of Yahweh, by the Lord of life. What was scattered he will restore. What was broken broke no more. From the grave to the promised land, he will raise them by his hand. These bones shall live, these bones shall rise. By his great name they shall be alive. And he placed two staffs into my hand, one for Judah, one for Joseph, and two undivided, now joined as one, healed by the word of the Holy One. No